So thank you for joining me today in the discussion regarding IEEE Standard 762. We all know that IEEE Standard 762 defines the key performance indicators that the global energy market uses to benchmark the reliability performance of conventional power plants. Availability factor, equivalent availability factor, starting reliability, and several others. NERC, SPS, independent system operators, the PJM, the CAL-ISO, utilities, merchants, non-utility generators, they all use IEEE Standard 762 metrics in some form or fashion to characterize the performance of their generating assets, either in assessing the performance and profitability of existing operating assets, or when they are planning and building financial models to substantiate new generation investments, to assess market alternatives. Today I have 4 goals that I want to achieve with this presentation. The first is I want to stimulate your interest in understanding IEEE 762 better than you do today. The second is I want you to see that even after decades of being in place, IEEE 762 is neither perfect nor complete. It has to continue to evolve to meet the new challenges that confront the energy market today. The third is I want you to understand that IEEE 762, the metrics provided, have real continued value in our market. Our customers at some level use some of the metrics to benchmark their performance against their peers. And sometimes, and you're going to hear me talk about it, sometimes they're using metrics incorrectly that have limited value. And finally, I want you to see that SPS is a leadership role, responsibility, and some level of accountability to continue and advance and motivate change in this important area, to move the industry forward, and to support each and every one of our customers. They will only understand the importance of data and metrics if we help them. And that means we all need to understand IEEE 762. A copy of this presentation has been given to everyone to follow along and to take notes. As we go along, I suggest that if any of you have a question or a comment, write it down in the space beside the slide that you're looking at, and I will address your questions or comments prior to the scheduled breaks that we'll take, or at the end of the presentation. If you have spent any time with the standard or the ORAP reports, or hopefully today the ORAP Analytics portal, you will see several of the IEEE metrics presented as factors or rates. Forced outage factor, forced outage rate, availability factor, equivalent availability factor, equivalent forced outage rate, equivalent forced outage rate sub D or with demand. The fundamental question is, what do they mean? What value do they have? Let's address these important questions. But first, some caveats. I know this screen is very difficult to read. I'm going to take you through the caveats that are on the screen. This chart is in IEEE 762. You should go read it. But first, a commercial break on what those caveats are. If you open up your copy of IEEE 762, mine dates back to 1976, and you read the small print, some important points have to be highlighted. They're essential to our understanding of the standard and its intended use. And here are some of the key points. The first is the standard is developed through consensus. The metrics are built over time based on market needs, views, and interests, and they evolve and they change over time. They are not set in concrete. Secondly, the use of the standard is voluntary. There is no enforcement. It's not mandatory. It's voluntary. Just market precedent and that is in place that drives the use and the intended value. The third is there's no warranty or guarantee that the metrics are measurable. Merchant ability is based on value and use. And lastly, and more importantly, the standard must be reviewed and reapproved on a 5-year cycle. The last one that they approved was in 2006. The review is long overdue. It is absolutely important to point out, and again, you can't read this slide, I'm going to point out what's important to you. It is absolutely important to point out that the standard is focused at the unit level. We all use that word, unit. The standard tells us clearly that it is. Read the fine print in the standard. Get your copy and read it. And it gives us a warning when it does that. The warning is very clear. It says the standard was developed for application at the unit level. Here's the warning. It does not address applications at the plant, component, or system level. I'll read that again. It does not address applications at the plant, component, or system level. Care should be taken when using the standard below the unit level. That means when we're dealing with data at the unit level, at the component level, at the system level, at the plant level, we need to be very concerned and careful with how we do it. It also tells us clearly that a unit includes equipment from the fuel supply to the high voltage structures, and that's exactly what we do in ORAP. A unit is a generator. It's a prime mover. Fuel in, power out, it all starts with that definition. It goes further and it tells us that plants can be comprised of a number of units, multiple units. The standard is interested in time and capacity, or energy, availability, and production. Each standard metric takes into account the frequency and duration of outage events. And guess what? We deal with outage events every day. The frequency and the duration, quantifying the time or production impact on the unit. That's very, very important. Factors are a measure of time, a percentage of time. If a unit experiences a 24-hour forced outage in a week, they are unavailable 14.3% of the time. Right? 24 divided by 168 better be 14.3%. Factors have to add up to 100%. Outage factors, service factors, and reserve factors, the sum gets you to 100%. So what about rates? Rates are supposed to be related to the probability, hear what I just said, to the probability of some type of event happening. If I had a 24-hour forced outage in a week, that 14.3%, what was the probability of that event occurring? Like the toss of a fair coin, if I toss the coin 50 times, I can determine the probability of a head by counting how many heads come up in 50 tosses. If 25 heads come up, the probability is 50%. If I toss the coin 100 times, I can do the same to see how many tails come up. I can determine the probability of a tail in those 100 tosses. Those are random events. The toss of a coin and the result as a random event. A forced outage is not something you plan for, right? You don't plan for a trip. A forced outage is a random event. Outage rates are intended to be the probability of an outage. What is the probability that my unit is not available to meet my production requirements because of a forced outage? Probability is a measure of likelihood of an outcome. What's the probability of a head in 50 tosses? Probability is a measure of the likelihood of an outcome, either desired or undesired. I could say, what's the probability of a forced outage? That's an undesired outcome. It's a measure of risk. The standard goes further and says that both full outages and deratings must be considered when deriving the metrics, because a derating or a forced outage represents a period of lost or reduced productivity, lost or reduced generation. And guess what? It's assumed that lost generation is a bad thing. If the unit is not available, the plant is not profitable, it doesn't make money. If an owner-operator makes profit when the unit is generating and producing power, any time that the unit is out of service or can't make full power because of a mechanical issue, like a crack in a nozzle or a vane, that is the basis for a D rating. Profitability goes down, money is being lost. And that is why trying to understand the measure of demand becomes another important variable in the equation. Because I only lose money when I wanted to or intended to use the unit and generate power. I don't lose money when I'm just sitting in a state of reserve shutdown and I don't intend to start. So the real question is, what is the probability of a unit being on a forced outage during a period of demand? For me, this begs the question, which IEEE metric answers that question? How do I know what the probability of a forced outage is? Clearly, outage factors are measures of time. They are additive. Are we satisfied that rates are measures of probability? And just a hint, I believe that equivalent forced outage rate, sub D, or based on demand, is not what it is intended to be, and I will show you that. Let's go back and ask the question, what's a unit? This is a very important question. It is important because if you can't get this right, everything else that you do to understand and compute reliability will be wrong. The unit is the least common denominator for organizing data, putting the operating, event, aging, and configuration data into the right buckets to calculate performance. And here are some examples of plan arrangements, typical layouts that you need to be familiar with and understand. They are not just pictures. When I look at them, when I look at these charts, they tell me a story. The arrangement on the upper left is a simple cycle arrangement configuration using heavy-duty gas turbine technology. The generator is shown on the cold end, the inlet air end, in front of the turbine's compressor, out of the hot exhaust, an exhaust temperature that can exceed 800 and could go up to 1200 degrees Fahrenheit. A combined cycle power plant needs 1000 degrees exhaust temperature to create high temperature steam. It also tells me that the starting system is a static frequency converter, pulling power from the grid and using the generator as a starting motor until the turbine gets to a breakaway speed. That picture tells me all that. Based on the specific heavy-duty technology, I would even know more about the arrangement. This is one unit. That's one unit. The arrangement on the upper right and lower left are both combined cycle configurations. Very more complex configurations. The arrangement on the upper right is a single shaft combined cycle with a condenser dump and a triple S clutch. That tells me something. A single shaft combined cycle uses both a Rankine cycle, which is a steam cycle, which is a closed cycle, and a Brayton gas turbine cycle, which is an open cycle, for improved output and thermal efficiency. Better thermal performance when compared with a simple cycle configuration. The condenser dump and the triple S clutch allowed this arrangement to essentially run in a simple cycle mode of operation for a limited amount of time, providing some level of operating flexibility. Once again, a picture is better than 1,000 words. It tells me something about the equipment arrangement. Notice the cold end generator. It's one unit. The arrangement on the lower left is a 3-on-1 multi-shaft combined cycle. 3 gas turbine generator sets, 3 heat recovery steam generators with a condenser dump, and a single steam turbine generator. Once again, notice the cold end drive gas turbine generator. In this arrangement, there are 4 units. Why 4? 3 gas turbine generator sets and 1 steam turbine generator. The fuel for the steam turbine is the exhaust gas from each operating heat recovery steam generator which takes the exhaust from its gas turbine and converts that into a high temperature, high pressure steam. This arrangement provides both improved thermal performance and higher reliability because of the operating flexibility associated with the redundant gas turbines. One or even two gas turbines can be out of service, but the plant can still operate, even if the output is lower. The last arrangement on the right shows two units. Both are Rankine cycle or steam cycle, each with a fired boiler. Each of these arrangements represents different technologies and a different number of units. It informs us that operating in event data, data that you deal with every day, must be captured and organized properly to reflect the reliability performance of the equipment. Data must be organized by unit, plant, site, customer to develop meaningful and correct IEEE 762 metrics. Now we all understand, or you will understand, how to deal with unit level data. You all also understand that through the OREP Analytics portal now we can talk about plant data. But we have a more complex configuration like that 3-on-1 combined cycle or the 1 combined cycle stag or steam on gas, which is a single shaft combined cycle. How do you deal with plant metrics when you're looking at those plant arrangements? Those are important questions. But all of this information is background. Let me jump ahead and tell you what the conclusions are that I want you to reach from this discussion. So here are the conclusions. First, factors have a higher value than rates. I will show you why. Period. Factors have a higher value than rates. And you are free to discuss that with me, but I hope that you will be convinced that that's a fact when we're done with this presentation. Second, rates are greatly influenced by service hours, generating time. I question the use of rates as a probability, unless service hours are treated as a proxy for demand. Third, understanding and quantifying the likelihood of a forced outage during a period of demand is still important to our industry and market. E4, EFOR, and E4 sub D just do not provide meaningful measures. They're meaningless. There are other alternatives, and I'll show you what they are. You should know about them. Let's stop approximating demand. There is a methodology in IEEE 762 which is used to approximate demand. It's not necessary. You can empirically see demand from the control system. And fifth, it's time to renew IEEE 762 and update it based on the competitive market that we all work in. So we're at a break point. Before we take a break, here's a question. If I were building a new plant and I had to justify the investment using factors or rates, which would I select? I think I gave you a hint, factors. And I'm going to show you why.